The conference. Junior Analyst Jessica Thompson had never felt more out of place than she did at the Galactic Security Conference. Sitting in a chair clearly designed for a species with tentacles instead of a spine, she tried to maintain her professional composure while Ambassador Crick T7, a being that looked like a jellyfish had mated with a disco ball, delivered his annual Threats to Galactic Peace presentation. The conference hall itself was a testament to interstellar architecture, with walls that seemed to shift between different phases of matter and a ceiling that displayed real-time feeds from various sectors of the galaxy. The air was thick with a mixture of atmospheres suitable for multiple species, making it feel like breathing through a straw filled with perfumed jello. And now, Crick T7's translator chirped, his tentacles forming patterns that made Jessica's eyes water. We come to the species ranked at the absolute bottom of our threat assessment. Even below the notoriously peaceful gas clouds of Nebula 9, who have yet to figure out that they exist, we have the humans. Jessica stopped doodling spaceships in her notes and looked up. Several beings turned their various sensory organs in her direction, radiating what she could only describe as patronizing amusement. Azor Blacken in the row ahead extended one of its eye stalks backward to get a better look, which was just rude. As we can see from the data, Crick T7 continued, his tentacles forming what Jessica assumed was the alien equivalent of air quotes. Humans have managed to achieve faster-than-light travel without destroying themselves, which our previous models deemed statistically impossible. However, their technological advancement remains charmingly primitive. The holographic display showed Earth's combined space fleet, making their most advanced ships look like tugboats compared to the sleek vessels of other species. Jessica sank lower in her chair as the crystalline beings in the audience vibrated with such amusement that they created a harmonic resonance making her teeth itch. During the coffee break that followed, Jessica made her way to the refreshment area, navigating around beings that ranged from sentient gas clouds to what appeared to be walking mathematical equations. The coffee station was a concession to the human delegation, though Jessica suspected the machine had been designed by someone who'd only had coffee described to them through interpretive dance. She was just adding her fourth packet of sugar to make the beverage somewhat palatable when Chief Security Officer Blix Blag of the Centurion Hegemony hovered into her path. The collision was inevitable, and her coffee splashed across his ceremonial tentacles. What happened next would change humanity's standing in the galaxy forever. Blix Blag's tentacles began vibrating at a frequency that made nearby data cubes spontaneously reorganize their filing systems. His central iPod dilated to twice its normal size, and the bioluminescent spots along his flank started flashing in patterns that probably violated several galactic advertising regulations. Containment breach, the security AI's voice boomed through the conference hall. Class A neurotoxin detected. Emergency protocols engaged. Emergency force fields sprang up around Jessica and Blix Blag as a decontamination team rushed in wearing what looked like spacesuits designed by someone who'd had abstract art described to them via interpretive dance. "What do you mean, Class A neurotoxin?" Jessica asked, taking another sip of her coffee. "This is just a vanilla latte with an extra shot." The decontamination team froze in horror. One of them made a sound like a startled bagpipe. "The human is consuming the neurotoxin," someone shrieked in 7 different frequencies simultaneously. "And surviving," added another voice that seemed to be coming from a being that was basically a floating collection of warning signs. The incident quickly escalated into a full-scale emergency session, with 3 different safety committees spontaneously forming to draft strongly worded proposals. Blix Blag, still high on caffeine, had started composing what he claimed was a new form of interpretive dance but looked more like a malfunctioning anti-gravity generator having an existential crisis. As Jessica watched the chaos unfold, she couldn't help but wonder if this might actually work in humanity's favor. After all, if they were this worried about coffee, wait until they found out about energy drinks, hot sauce, and their habit of eating fermented foods for fun. The emergency session was scheduled for the next day, and Jessica spent the evening preparing her presentation on human resilience. She knew she had to handle this carefully, revealing too much too quickly might cause a panic, but this was also humanity's chance to be taken seriously in the galactic community. Little did she know that the next day's proceedings would be interrupted by something far more dramatic than coffee-induced chaos. As she reviewed her notes in her quarters aboard the station, a distant alarm began to sound, and the artificial gravity hiccuped in a way that suggested something very, very wrong was about to happen. The pirates were coming, and they were about to learn exactly why underestimating humanity was a terrible mistake. The pirates' attack. The Crimson Nebula pirates chose possibly the worst moment to attack the Galactic Security Conference, right in the middle of Jessica Thompson's presentation on human dietary habits. Their flagship, the Stellar Scourge, burst through the station's protective shields in a display that would have been impressive if it wasn't so poorly timed. As you can see from this graph, Jessica was saying, pointing to a holographic display of human spice tolerance levels, what we consider a mild curry would be classified as a chemical weapon in most. She was interrupted by the sound of explosive decompression as the pirates literally crashed their ship through the conference center's dome. The pirates, led by the notorious Captain Zyxtal, had clearly expected panic and chaos. What they hadn't expected was a human's instinctive reaction to an emergency situation. While most delegates either froze in place or initiated their species' various emergency protocols, the gaseous delegates had already condensed into worried droplets. Jessica's first thought was distinctly human: the coffee machine is in that section of the building. The pirates, a motley crew of various species united by their love of dramatic entrances and poor decision-making, poured into the conference hall through breaching pods. Captain Zyxtal, a towering figure with crystalline armor and too many arms to count, activated his universal translator. This facility is now under the control of the Crimson Nebula pirates. Surrender your valuables and, he paused, noticing Jessica calmly walking toward the refreshment area. You. Human. Stop where you are. Look, Jessica said, not breaking stride, I haven't had my afternoon coffee yet, and you just blew up the only decent coffee machine in this sector of space. So you have exactly two options: either you help me salvage that machine, or we're going to have a problem. The pirates, used to dealing with more conventional reactions like begging for mercy or attempting to negotiate, seemed unsure how to handle this response. Captain Zyxtal's crystalline structure vibrated in what might have been confusion. Did the human just threaten us? One of the junior pirates asked, his tentacles twisting in confusion. Impossible, another replied. They're ranked below the gas clouds of Nebula 9 in threat assessment. That's when Jessica reached the damaged coffee machine, assessed its condition, and did something that would later be described in pirate legends as the caffeine gambit. She grabbed the machine's power core, a small fusion reactor that the station engineers had installed because humans had insisted on real coffee, and held it up. This powers the coffee maker, she explained calmly. It's also, technically speaking, a fusion reactor. Now, my species has a long history of doing incredibly stupid things when denied coffee. Would anyone like to guess what happens if I breach this containment unit? The pirates, who had extensive experience with fusion reactors but apparently none with caffeine-deprived humans, took a collective step back. Captain Zyxtal's crystalline armor began to develop stress fractures. You wouldn't, he said, though his translator couldn't quite hide the uncertainty in his voice. That would destroy half the station. Bold of you to assume I've had enough coffee to care about consequences, Jessica replied, channeling generations of humans who had faced Monday mornings without caffeine. What happened next would later be debated in xenopsychology conferences across the galaxy. The pirates, faced with a human who was simultaneously violating their understanding of rational behavior and threatening to create a localized sun, did something unprecedented: they began to negotiate. Meanwhile, in the conference hall's security center, the emergency response team watched in amazement as Jessica single-handedly created a hostage situation where she was technically both the hostage and the hostage-taker. Fascinating, burbled Dr. Plexer, who had somehow managed to ooze their way into the security center. The human is displaying classic signs of what they call being done with this nonsense. We must update our threat assessment protocols immediately. The situation reached its peak when Jessica, having secured promises of both a new coffee machine and compensation for the destroyed one, decided to demonstrate why humans were classified as persistence predators. She organized the conference delegates into an impromptu resistance force, using their various natural abilities in ways the pirates hadn't anticipated. The gaseous delegates, who had never considered themselves useful in combat, were stationed near ventilation systems to detect pirate movements. The crystalline beings, still vibrating from the earlier coffee incident, were positioned to create harmonic resonances that interfered with the pirates' communication systems. Even Blix Blag, who had only recently recovered from his caffeine high, contributed by using his tentacles' newly discovered ability to disrupt electronic systems through interpretive dance. As the resistance grew, the pirates found themselves facing an increasingly coordinated defense led by a species they had dismissed as harmless. Jessica's understanding of various species' abilities, combined with humanity's knack for improvising weapons out of everyday objects, turned the tide of the battle. The pirates' superior technology meant little when faced with the chaos of human innovation. Jessica had turned the conference's presentation system into an improvised EMP device, using knowledge gained from late-night gaming sessions and an understanding of alien technology that she'd picked up from fixing the office coffee maker. As the station's security forces finally arrived, they found the pirates largely subdued, their weapons disabled, and their pride thoroughly wounded. Captain Zyxtal, his crystalline armor now decorated with, "Kicked by a human," etched in various languages, was attempting to surrender to a potted plant, having lost track of who was actually in charge. The incident would later be recorded in the Galactic Security Archives as the Coffee Machine Rebellion, though some scholars insisted on calling it the day humanity got upgraded from harmless to approach with caution, possibly insane. But the day wasn't over yet. As the security forces began processing the captured pirates, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Something was wrong with the station's orbital stabilizers, and the pirates' dramatic entrance had done more damage than initially thought. The station was beginning to fall out of its carefully maintained orbit, and the artificial gravity was becoming increasingly unreliable. Jessica looked at the remains of the coffee machine, then at the approaching crisis, and sighed. It was going to be a long day, and she was going to need more coffee. Orbital crisis. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated again, causing several delegates to float momentarily before crashing back to the floor. Jessica Thompson, who had spent 6 months training for zero-gravity conditions, mostly because she'd heard the space station had better coffee, remained firmly planted thanks to her magnetic boots. Status report, demanded Station Administrator of Clax, their crystalline form vibrating with anxiety frequencies. The pirates' breach of the station's dome has compromised our orbital stabilizers, reported Chief Engineer Zyx, a being that appeared to be made entirely of flowing mathematical equations. We have approximately 3 hours before the station's orbit decays completely. The assembled alien delegates began their species' various panic responses. The gaseous delegates condensed into worried droplets, the crystalline beings vibrated at frequencies that threatened to shatter nearby windows, and the energy beings started to flicker like faulty light bulbs. Jessica, however, was doing mental calculations while checking her datapad. "The station's maintenance tubes," she said suddenly. "How big are they?" "Approximately 0.75 meters in diameter," Zyx replied. "But they're not meant for." "Perfect," Jessica interrupted. "That's just large enough for a human to crawl through." The room fell silent, save for the occasional worried burble from Dr. Plexer, who was recording everything for their ongoing study of human behavior. "Crawl through." Administrator of Clax's translator struggled with the concept. "The maintenance tubes are filled with radiation, extreme temperature variations, and toxic gases." "Yeah, but I've got 3 protein bars in my pocket and I haven't hit my daily step count yet," Jessica replied, already removing her formal conference jacket. "Besides, someone needs to manually restart the auxiliary power couplings, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only one here who can fit through those tubes and survive the conditions." The assembled aliens watched in horror as Jessica began preparing for what they considered a suicide mission. She borrowed environmental shielding from the station's emergency supplies, designed for beings 3 times her size, stripped it down to its essential components, and jury-rigged it into something resembling protective gear. Human Thompson, Dr. Plexer oozed forward, their purple coloring showing signs of scientific excitement mixed with concern. Our calculations suggest that even with protection, the radiation levels in those tubes would be lethal to most species. Good thing humans are basically cockroaches when it comes to radiation, then, Jessica grinned, securing the makeshift helmet. Did you know we actually repair DNA damage from radiation exposure? Not perfectly, but well enough to survive this. The maintenance tube access point was located behind a panel that had been designed by engineers who apparently believed maintenance would be performed by beings capable of phase shifting through solid matter. Jessica, armed with nothing but determination and a multi-tool sheet borrowed from the pirates, managed to get it open through what she called percussive maintenance and what everyone else called hitting it until it worked. The auxiliary power couplings are located in section G17, ZYX, for 27 explained, projecting a holographic map. You'll need to crawl through 300 meters of tubes, avoid the plasma conduits, manually restart 3 power nodes, and not die, Jessica finished, checking her oxygen supply. Got it. Quick question though, the station's artificial gravity is failing, right? Correct, Clax confirmed. In approximately 47 minutes, we will lose gravity control entirely. Perfect, Jessica grinned. That'll make the crawling part much easier. Zero-G parkour is way more fun than regular parkour. Before anyone could ask what parkour was, and why it needed a zero-gravity variant, Jessica had sealed her helmet and pulled herself into the maintenance tube. The assembled aliens watched through the station's internal sensors as she began making her way through the maze of tunnels, occasionally humming what she later explained was her maintenance crawl playlist. The next hour was a testament to humanity's unique approach to problem solving. When faced with a plasma leak, Jessica used her borrowed pirate multi-tool to redirect it, creating an improvised propulsion system that shot her through several sections of tubing. When she encountered a section of tube filled with toxic gas, she used the temperature difference between sections to create a pressure gradient that cleared her path. Fascinating, Dr. Plexer commented, watching Jessica use principles of thermodynamics to solve problems that most species would consider insurmountable. The human is displaying problem-solving abilities that suggest their species' classification as primitive may have been somewhat hasty. The real challenge came when Jessica reached the auxiliary power couplings. The system had been designed by engineers who assumed maintenance would be performed by robots or beings capable of surviving hard vacuum. The control panel was located on the outside of the station. Slight problem, Jessica's voice crackled over the comm, the panel's external. Anyone want to tell me why the emergency controls are on the outside of the space station? The designers believed no organic being would be foolish enough to attempt manual maintenance in such conditions, Clax. The revelation. As Jessica Thompson prepared for her impromptu spacewalk to access the external control panel, the station's remaining delegates were watching in a mixture of horror and fascination. The conference room had been converted into an emergency command center, with holographic displays showing both Jessica's vital signs and the station's increasingly unstable orbit. Human Thompson, administrator of Clax's voice crackled through the comm, their crystalline form vibrating with concern. The external temperature in that section varies between approximately 200 degrees Celsius in direct starlight and minus 150 degrees Celsius in shadow. Your protective equipment was not designed for such extremes. Yeah, Jessica replied, checking the seals on her jury-rigged spacesuit, but humans are actually pretty good at handling temperature extremes. We evolved on a planet where you can get frostbite and heatstroke in the same day. Besides, I grew up in Minnesota, this is practically beach weather. The assembled aliens watched as Jessica prepared to exit through a maintenance airlock that had clearly been designed for beings with very different physiological requirements. She had modified her protective gear using parts salvaged from the pirates' equipment, creating what she called a space-worthy suit, and what the station's safety AI labeled a violation of approximately 157 safety protocols. Before you proceed, Dr. Plexer oozed closer to the communication panel, their purple coloration showing signs of intense scientific curiosity. Could you explain why you appear to be, what is the term? Stretching. Oh, this? Jessica paused in the middle of a lunging stretch. Basic warm-up. Humans need to prepare their muscles for physical activity. Also, I figured since I'm about to become the first human to do maintenance parkour in hard vacuum, I should probably limber up. The concept of maintenance parkour was hastily added to several species threat assessment databases. As Jessica cycled through the airlock, the station's external cameras captured what would later be described in xenobiological journals as proof that humans are either the most adaptable or most insane species in the known galaxy, possibly both. Using the pirates' magnetic grappling tools combined with her own understanding of momentum in zero gravity, Jessica began making her way across the station's hull. She moved with a grace that seemed to defy the conventional understanding of how organic beings should behave in space, using the station's structural features as anchor points and occasionally propelling herself through space with controlled bursts from a repurposed pirate thruster. Remarkable, commented a silicon-based being who had been monitoring her vital signs. The human's endocrine system is releasing chemicals that appear to be enjoying this. Adrenaline, Jessica explained, using a maintenance strut to swing herself around a communications array. It's basically our body's way of saying, this is dangerous and awesome. Speaking of which, how long until the station's orbit deteriorates? Approximately 47 minutes until critical failure, Clax reported. Though I feel compelled to point out that your current activities have been added to no fewer than 12 different guidelines for activities prohibited in civilized space lists. Jessica finally reached the external control panel, only to find another problem. The panel had been designed for beings with significantly more appendages and a very different understanding of what constituted a simple interface. Okay, she muttered, examining the alien control system. This looks like it was designed by an octopus having a geometry crisis. Anyone want to talk me through this? What followed was a crash course in xenotechnology as Jessica attempted to operate controls designed for species with radically different physical and mental frameworks. The fact that she was doing this while hanging off the side of a space station, occasionally dodging debris from the pirates' earlier attack, added an extra layer of complexity to the situation. The primary reset sequence requires simultaneous activation of 7 different control surfaces, explained Chief Engineer ZYX-427, their mathematical form fluctuating with anxiety. It was designed to be operated by beings with multiple tentacles and the ability to perceive 11 dimensions simultaneously. Right, Jessica said, examining the panel. So what you're saying is, I need to press all the buttons at once, but some of the buttons exist in dimensions I can't see. Challenge accepted. What happened next would later be studied in advanced xenoengineering courses across the galaxy. Using a combination of her multi-tool, several zip ties from her emergency kit, and what she called good old human ingenuity, Jessica created an improvised mechanical system that could activate all the required controls simultaneously, including the ones that technically existed in dimensions she couldn't perceive. That's not possible, muttered one of the quantum physicists observing the operation. She's manipulating controls in dimensions she can't even comprehend. Yeah, but that's kind of our thing, Jessica replied, carefully adjusting her makeshift control rig. Humans are really good at working with stuff we don't understand. We built entire civilizations before we figured out how most things worked. Half our scientific discoveries happened because someone looked at something impossible and said, "Hold my beer." The term, "hold my beer," was immediately added to the galactic database of high-threat human phrases. As Jessica activated her jury-rigged control system, the station's systems began to respond. Power flowed back into the auxiliary systems, and the orbital stabilizers slowly came back online. The immediate crisis was averted, but the incident had revealed something far more significant about humanity's place in the galaxy. As Jessica made her way back through the airlock, she found herself facing a room full of aliens who were rapidly reassessing their understanding of human capabilities. The fact that she immediately asked if anyone had managed to salvage the coffee machine only added to their confusion. But the day wasn't over yet. As the station's systems were being restored, long-range sensors detected something approaching, something that made the pirate attack look like a minor inconvenience. The galactic community was about to learn that humans weren't just surprisingly resilient, they were unexpectedly essential to the galaxy's survival. The final crisis. The station's long-range sensors were detecting something that shouldn't have been possible, a quantum anomaly moving at faster-than-light speeds, headed directly for the most densely populated sector of the galaxy. The readings were causing the station's quantum physicists to emit distress frequencies in wavelengths previously thought theoretical. Jessica Thompson, still in her modified spacesuit and nursing a cup of emergency backup coffee, which she rated slightly better than engine degreaser, watched as the holographic display showed the approaching phenomenon. It appears to be some form of cascade failure in the quantum fabric of spacetime, explained Chief Scientist XCLAT, their energy form flickering with anxiety. The pirate's unconventional entry method, combined with our station's unique position at a convergence point of several spatial lanes, has created a chain reaction. In simple terms, Jessica translated, we accidentally poked a hole in the universe, and now it's getting bigger. Simplified to the point of physical pain, XCLAT winced, but essentially correct. The anomaly is consuming normal spacetime and converting it into something else. Our models suggest it will reach the nearest populated system in approximately 6 hours. The conference room, still serving as an emergency command center, erupted into chaos. Various species began their unique panic responses, ranging from phase shifting to spontaneous mitosis. Dr. Plexer had turned a shade of purple previously unknown to chromatic science. Can we evacuate the threatened systems? Administrator of CLAX asked, their crystalline form developing stress fractures. The affected area includes 17 major systems with a total population of approximately 12 trillion beings, XCLAT replied. Even with every available ship, we could only evacuate a fraction of a percent. Jessica stared at the holographic display, watching the anomaly's predicted path. Then she did something that made several aliens question their understanding of human psychology. She smiled. You know, she said, taking another sip of her terrible coffee, this reminds me of something that happened back on Earth. There was this nuclear reactor that was about to melt down, and they needed volunteers to open a valve underwater in the radioactive coolant pool. Is this another example of humans surviving conditions that should be lethal? Dr. Plexer interrupted, their scientific curiosity momentarily overriding their existential dread. Kind of, Jessica grinned. But it's more about how humans approach problems. See, sometimes the best solution isn't the most elegant one. Sometimes you just need to do something incredibly stupid and hope it works. She pointed to the display. The anomaly is basically a hole in spacetime, right? And it's growing because of some kind of chain reaction. Correct, XCLAT confirmed. The quantum fabric is unraveling like I believe the human term is sweater. So what if we give it something else to unravel? Jessica asked. Something that's already unstable at the quantum level? Something like, say, a jury-rigged fusion reactor that's been modified to power a coffee machine. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The station's original coffee machine, with its absurdly overpowered fusion core, had been designed to meet humanity's caffeine requirements. The pirates' attack had damaged it, making it even more unstable. You want to throw a broken fusion reactor into a quantum anomaly? CLAX's translator seemed to struggle with the concept. That's completely insane. Jessica suggested. Yeah, that's kind of our specialty. But think about it, the anomaly is consuming and converting normal spacetime. What happens if we give it something that's already in the process of converting matter to energy in a very unstable way? The quantum physicists in the room began rapid calculations, their various appendages and energy fields moving in complex patterns. After several minutes, one of them spoke up. Theoretically, they said, their voice modulating through several quantum states simultaneously, introducing an unstable fusion reaction into the anomaly could disrupt its conversion process. The competing energy patterns might cause it to collapse in on itself. Or it could make everything exponentially worse, Jessica finished. Yeah, that's usually how these plans go. But right now, our options are, definitely everyone dies or, maybe everyone dies, but at least we tried something. What followed was perhaps the most unlikely preparation for a rescue mission in galactic history. The damaged coffee machine's fusion core was modified further, turning it into what Jessica termed a quantum hand grenade. The station's engineers, working with human instructions that violated several laws of physics, created a delivery system using parts from the captured pirate ships. The plan was simple, in the way that only truly insane plans can be. Jessica would pilot a modified pirate ship carrying the unstable fusion core directly into the anomaly. The timing would have to be perfect, too early, and the anomaly would simply consume the energy, too late, and there wouldn't be enough normal spacetime left to contain the reaction. As she prepared for what several species were already calling a gloriously pointless sacrifice, Jessica made one last request. If this works, she said, securing herself in the pilot's seat, I want humanity's official threat level changed to absolutely insane, but somehow it works. Also, the next station better have a proper coffee machine. The launch was timed precisely. Jessica piloted the ship toward the anomaly, watching as reality itself began to distort around her. The fusion core behind her was becoming increasingly unstable, its containment fields fluctuating in ways that made the ship's sensors emit panic signals in 17 different languages. As she approached the anomaly's event horizon, Jessica broadcast one final message, Hey, universe. Hold my coffee. The resulting explosion was visible from 3 neighboring galaxies. The quantum anomaly, faced with an unstable fusion reaction guided by human insanity, did what any sensible cosmic phenomenon would do, it collapsed in on itself, taking the fusion core with it and leaving behind nothing but a slight ripple in spacetime and a faint smell of burnt coffee. When Jessica's ship emerged from the other side of where the anomaly had been, surfing the wave of quantum disruption like a cosmic surfer catching the ultimate wave, the galactic community finally understood something fundamental about humans. They weren't just surviving against the odds, they were rewriting the odds entirely. The Galactic Security Conference reconvened a week later, with some significant changes to its threat assessment protocols. Humanity was officially reclassified as approach with caution, known to violate laws of physics when caffeine deprived. The conference also approved, with unprecedented unanimity, the installation of industrial-grade coffee machines in all major galactic facilities. As for Jessica Thompson, she received both a commendation for saving the galaxy and a formal reprimand for violating approximately 3,547 safety protocols in the process. She considered it a fair trade, especially since the new coffee machine they installed could brew a cup strong enough to wake up a black hole. The incident would be remembered in galactic history as the day the galaxy realized that humans weren't just another spacefaring species, they were the cosmic equivalent of that one friend who would either get you killed or save your life, possibly both at the same time, and somehow make it look easy. End.